From patrol to the White House, Hero Cop awarded by President Trump. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. The amber hue of dusk settled softly over Maplewood, the small town where Officer James Carter had walked his beat for over a decade. His patrol car rolled smoothly along the familiar streets, tires humming gently against the asphalt. The storefronts cast long shadows, their signs flickering to life as businesses wrapped up for the evening. Children's laughter, distant and fading, mingled with the rustle of trees stirred by a light breeze. To an outsider, it was an ordinary town winding down for the night. To Carter, it was a neighborhood stitched into the fabric of his life. Inside the cruiser, the radio murmured routine chatter from dispatch. Carter's voice, steady and low, crackled through as he checked in, methodical and precise. He adjusted the rearview mirror, glancing briefly at the fading glow of the horizon before turning his focus back to the quiet streets. He lifted a hand now and then to greet residents, a shopkeeper locking up, a couple strolling hand in hand, an elderly man sweeping his porch. They nodded back with smiles of easy familiarity. To them, Carter wasn't just a uniform. He was a neighbor, a guardian woven into their everyday lives. He made a slow turn past Thompson's Deli, pausing just long enough to ensure the last customer had left safely. The sidewalks began to clear, the quiet deepening with every passing minute. These were the moments Carter appreciated most, not for their stillness alone but for the quiet reassurance they brought. Peace meant everyone was safe, and in a town like Maplewood, safety wasn't something taken for granted. As the car eased down Main Street, Carter's thoughts wandered briefly to his own family, his younger brother in college, his late father who had once patrolled these same streets, his mother's kitchen light that would still be on when his shift ended. This job wasn't just a duty for him. It was a continuation of a promise that spanned generations to protect, to serve, and to never falter when the town called on him. The calm wrapped itself around him like an old coat, familiar and reassuring, until a sharp burst from the radio shattered it in an instant. Unit 4, possible armed robbery in progress, Maplewood convenience, shots fired. Back up en route, Carter's gaze snapped to the dashboard. His muscles tensed not from fear, but from pure, honed focus. His hand shot to the light controls. Blue and red strobes blinked to life on his roof as the siren cut through the quiet town like a blade. In one fluid motion, his foot pressed hard on the accelerator, the cruiser leaping forward with purpose. The streets blurred past as he maneuvered through the narrow lanes. His heartbeat stayed even, breath measured. Years of experience had taught him to harness the surge of adrenaline rather than be ruled by it. His mind calculated distances, potential exits, the location of neighboring units. He was already building the scene in his head before he even arrived. As the cruiser raced through the intersection near Jefferson Park, Carter's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing with resolve. Every second counted. Somewhere, under the neon glow of Maplewood convenience, lives were hanging in the balance. He leaned slightly forward over the steering wheel, shoulders squared, posture braced. His world shrank down to the task ahead. A single, clear objective. Arrive quickly, assess faster, act decisively. The familiar charm of Maplewood blurred into insignificance behind him. The town's heartbeat had faltered and Carter was the one running to restart it. In moments like these, he never thought of awards or recognition. He never wondered who would notice or how the story might be told later. His only thought was direct and immovable: someone needed help and he would be there. That was the weight he carried, and it sat on his shoulders as comfortably as the badge on his chest. The distance to the convenience store shrank rapidly. The store's bright signage glowed faintly in the distance as Carter's cruiser surged forward. His eyes swept the surroundings, cataloging exits, vantage points, possible threats. Years on the force had sharpened his instincts, but it was his unwavering sense of duty that steered him now more than training alone. He eased off the accelerator as he neared the store's lot, cutting the siren to avoid alerting the suspects too soon. Flickering lights from broken glass reflected off the pavement. The familiar became foreign, the safety of Maplewood shattered in an instant. Carter reached for his radio to confirm his arrival, voice clipped and precise. His free hand settled naturally on his sidearm, thumb brushing the release in a motion practiced so often it felt second nature. He parked several yards from the entrance, angling the car for cover. His breath remained slow, deliberate, every movement economical. This was the crucible in which he'd been forged, not by headlines or applause, but by the quiet expectation that when danger arose, someone would step forward without hesitation. James Carter had always been that man. Without pausing, he unbuckled, eased open the door, and stepped into the cooling evening air. His boots met the asphalt with quiet finality. He advanced cautiously, eyes sharp, posture low but assured. The distant hum of approaching backup barely registered. Right now, there was only the task at hand. Whatever waited inside those shattered doors, Carter would meet it head-on. Because that's what guardians do. And tonight, his town needed one. The cruiser's tires crunched against scattered glass as Carter eased into the dimly lit lot of Maplewood convenience. Neon signs flickered weakly against the night sky, casting fractured reflections onto shards that sparkled across the pavement. Parked cars stood abandoned, their doors flung open in haste. Behind them, customers crouched low, faces pale, breaths shallow. Fear clung thick in the air. Carter's eyes swept the scene with practiced precision. The store's front windows were jagged, hollowed out by violence. Inside, silhouetted figures moved sharply. 3 masked assailants, their gestures aggressive, weapons flashing as they barked demands at the clerk behind the register. A young woman huddled near the snack aisle, her hands trembling around a cell phone. Carter lowered himself behind the cover of a sedan, his breath calm despite the chaos. He thumbed the radio clipped to his vest. Unit 4 on scene, active robbery in progress, 3 suspects armed, requesting immediate backup. Civilians present. The response crackled confirmation, but Carter wasn't waiting. Every second risked more lives. He drew his sidearm smoothly, shoulders squaring as he gauged distance and angles. His boots barely made a sound as he advanced along the driver's side of a delivery van, inching closer to the shattered entrance. His focus narrowed. He wasn't thinking about the town anymore, or even himself. His mind was fixed solely on containment and protection. From his vantage point, he caught snippets of the suspects shouting, "Hurry it up! Empty the drawer! No sudden moves or you're done!" Carter's jaw tightened. His window to intervene was closing fast. He moved closer, positioning himself at the edge of the doorway. With clarity sharpened by countless drills and field experience, he projected his voice, firm, controlled, undeniable. "Police, drop your weapons. Now!" The command sliced through the store's clamor like a crack of thunder. For a heartbeat, the entire scene froze. The clerk's eyes shot to Carter, wide and desperate. The woman by the aisle stifled a gasp. The robbers turned in jagged unison. One of them, clad in a dark hoodie, raised his firearm without hesitation, the barrel angling toward Carter. Carter didn't flinch. His finger tightened, sights aligned. A single shot echoed sharp, clean. The robber's weapon clattered from his grasp as he staggered, clutching his shoulder and crumpling behind a display rack. The spell shattered. The other 2 suspects lurched into motion, one vaulting over the counter, the other bolting toward the rear exit. Carter was already moving, cutting into the aisle with precision. He intercepted the man behind the counter first, driving him hard into a metal shelf. The robber swung wildly, fists fueled by panic more than technique. Carter absorbed the blow to his vest, pivoted, and locked the man's arm with practiced efficiency. A grunt, a twist, and the suspect hit the floor, weapon skidding uselessly away. The third robber had nearly reached the exit, feet slipping on scattered merchandise, when Carter closed the gap. He tackled him low, momentum carrying them both down. The suspect struggled, elbow jabbing backward, but Carter's grip cinched tight. He wrenched the gun free, sliding it across the linoleum, then pinned the man with a knee to the back. The bystanders remained huddled, frozen in place, too stunned to move. Carter's voice, steady and commanding, cut through the disarray. "Stay down. You're safe now." Outside, the growing wail of sirens grew louder, backup converging fast. Within seconds, uniformed officers poured into the store, weapons drawn but controlled. They fanned out, securing the disarmed suspects and escorting shaken civilians to safety. Carter rose slowly, breath measured though adrenaline still coursed through him. His eyes scanned the store again, ensuring no threats lingered. Glass crunched underfoot as officers cuffed the wounded robber and hauled him upright. The young woman near the aisle began to sob softly, relief spilling over in jagged breaths. The lead officer, Sergeant Marquez, approached Carter with a nod. "Scene secured." "Good work, Carter." Carter gave a short nod back, holstering his weapon smoothly. His shoulders relaxed fractionally, though his gaze remained sharp. As paramedics streamed in to tend to the injured suspect and assess civilians, Carter stepped aside, giving them space. He didn't seek the spotlight. His satisfaction came from the small details: unharmed civilians, weapons recovered, suspects restrained. The equation balanced. He leaned briefly against a counter, exhaling slowly, the weight of the moment settling in. His mind replayed every move, every second, not for pride but to catalog, to learn, to be sharper next time. That was his nature, to prepare for what would inevitably come again. Outside, the lot brimmed with flashing lights and gathered townsfolk. Familiar faces peered anxiously beyond the cordon. Carter caught sight of Mr. Davis from the hardware store and Lila, the baker's daughter, their expressions shifting from fear to relief as they realized who had brought calm back to their night. Inside, Sergeant Marquez began coordinating statements and evidence collection. Officers moved with methodical precision, their steps measured, their voices low. Order restored itself layer by layer. Carter straightened and approached the young woman still crouched near the aisle. He extended a hand, palm open and steady. She hesitated, then took it. He helped her rise gently, offering a reassuring nod. "You did well. It's over." Her eyes shimmered, gratitude and disbelief mingling wordlessly. Carter gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile before turning back to assist his fellow officers in securing the final details. The night was far from over. Reports would be written, evidence logged, statements collected. But the worst had passed, and for now that was enough. Outside, Maplewood's heartbeat had steadied once more, and Officer James Carter had been the one to restore it. The flashing lights began to dim as paramedics moved steadily through the aftermath. Their gloved hands worked quickly, tending to minor scrapes and checking pulses. The young woman from the snack aisle sat on the back of an ambulance, her breathing finally slowing as an EMT wrapped a blanket over her shoulders. The store clerk, pale but upright, sipped water handed to him by an officer, nodding silently as his nerves gradually settled. James Carter stood near the curb, his uniform marked with faint smudges of dust and sweat. His knuckles bore a shallow scrape, a quiet testament to the struggle moments earlier. He rotated his shoulder carefully, confirming no real injury. Physically, he was intact, mentally alert as ever. A pair of elderly customers approached cautiously, their expressions tight with lingering fear. The woman gripped her husband's hand but stepped forward. Her voice, though soft, carried conviction. "Officer, thank you. You saved lives tonight." Carter's answer was as it always had been. Steady, unembellished. "I'm glad you're safe. That's what matters." More townsfolk trickled in as word spread. Familiar faces from the bakery, the hardware store, the post office. Shopkeepers, students, retirees. All converging under the dim streetlights, drawn together by relief and gratitude. Hands clapped his shoulder. Words of thanks tumbled freely. "You kept us safe. God bless you. Could have been so much worse." He responded each time with a nod or a quiet smile, accepting their thanks without basking in it. On the far end of the lot, yellow tape flapped lightly in the evening breeze as officers methodically secured the scene. Evidence markers dotted the store interior. Sergeant Marquez coordinated the cleanup with practiced efficiency, casting Carter a knowing glance that held both approval and familiarity. No grand speeches, just the silent acknowledgement of a job done right. By now, local news vans had arrived, their satellite dishes glinting under lamplight. Reporters busied themselves setting up, microphones in hand, their camera crews adjusting angles to catch the broken windows and scattered glass. One young journalist, notebook tucked under her arm, approached Carter carefully. "Officer Carter, would you mind answering a few questions?" He hesitated only briefly before offering a polite nod. She gestured to the camera operator, and within seconds a red light blinked on. "You acted swiftly tonight, sir. What was going through your mind when you confronted the suspects?" Carter's gaze stayed level, voice measured and even. "My priority was the safety of everyone inside. We're trained for moments like this. My team and I did what needed to be done." The reporter pressed gently, sensing humility but searching for more. "Many here are calling you a hero. How does that feel?" He shifted slightly, choosing his words with care. "I don't think of it like that. It's not about heroics. This is what we're here to do. My colleagues would have done the same." Her lips parted to ask another question. But Carter's glance drifted beyond her to where Sergeant Marquez was motioning officers together for a debrief. He offered a brief nod to the reporter. "Excuse me, I should check in." She lowered her microphone, offering a respectful smile. "Thank you, officer, for everything." Carter turned and strode back toward his team, his mind already shifting back to procedures and reports. Yet even as the scene slowly dissolved, officers packing up evidence kits, paramedics clearing out, store employees cautiously sweeping glass, something else was beginning to ripple beyond the quiet town. Unseen by Carter, a bystander's cell phone video had already been uploaded online. The footage, shaky but clear, showed him advancing on the store, voice ringing with calm authority. Another clip from a cruiser dashcam captured his swift takedown of the armed suspect. Within hours, those videos were spreading rapidly. On social media, captions echoed the same sentiment. Local officer risks life to protect community. Quick-thinking cop saves hostages during armed robbery. True courage in small-town America. Comments flooded in from strangers far beyond the town's borders. Words of admiration, gratitude, and respect scrolled endlessly beneath the clips. "This is the kind of policing we need," one read. Another, "I don't know Officer Carter, but I'd feel safe in his town." Meanwhile, unaware of the growing attention, Carter sat at a folding table behind the store, scribbling notes for his incident report. A cup of black coffee steamed gently beside him, untouched. The soft murmur of fellow officers nearby grounded him. This was the part most people didn't see: the paperwork, the debrief, the quiet winding down after the storm. Sergeant Marquez approached, leaning a hip against the table. "Your face is probably on every phone in the county by now," he remarked dryly. Carter glanced up, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Marquez lifted his chin toward a young officer scrolling through his phone a few yards away. The officer looked up, grinning. "You're going viral, man. People are calling you a hero." Carter exhaled slowly, expression unreadable. "I just did my job," he said, voice even. Marquez gave a small, knowing chuckle and pushed off the table. "You did more than that, Carter. Don't sell yourself short." The sergeant walked away, leaving Carter alone with his thoughts. He sat back, letting the pen slip from his fingers as he stared across the parking lot. The street was calm now, its pulse steady once more. People were safe. That was the only measure that ever mattered to him. The buzz of recognition, the headlines, the flood of praise, it didn't change his core. He wasn't chasing glory, nor did he intend to. His path had always been simple: protect and serve, whether anyone noticed or not. The town around him was drifting back to life, the crisis already shifting into memory. Yet somewhere in that gentle return to normalcy, something deeper lingered. Not fame. Not headlines. A quiet, collective gratitude. And for Carter, that was enough. The morning sun cast long streaks across the precinct's worn linoleum floors as Officer James Carter pushed through the glass doors. His gait was unhurried, the familiar hum of ringing phones and clacking keyboards filling the air. To him, it was another day, another shift, steady, predictable, grounding. Yet, as he made his way toward his desk, something unusual rippled through the station. Conversations hushed, glances darted toward him, and a thin undercurrent of excitement stirred among his fellow officers. Sergeant Marquez spotted him first, cutting across the bullpen with a rare grin tugging at his lips. "Carter, Captain wants you. Now." The words carried weight, more than the usual summons for paperwork or briefing. Curious, Carter set his patrol cap on his desk and made his way to the captain's office. The door, slightly ajar, swung open with a gentle creak. Inside, Captain Rollins, a seasoned man with decades behind his steely gaze, sat upright at his desk. His uniform was crisply pressed, his expression unusually serious yet tinged with something softer. "Close the door, James. Have a seat." Carter complied silently, easing into the chair opposite his superior. Without preamble, Rollins slid a thick, embossed envelope across the desk. The paper shimmered slightly under the fluorescent lights, official, unmistakable. "It arrived early this morning," Rollins said, voice low and deliberate. "And that's not all. You've got a call holding." Carter's brow furrowed as he broke the wax seal and unfolded the heavy parchment. His eyes skimmed the neat, formal lines, reading once, then again to be sure. "The President of the United States requests the honor of your presence at the White House to recognize your exemplary service and valor." For a rare moment, words eluded him. His breath settled somewhere between disbelief and quiet awe. The weight of the document, the gravity behind each meticulously printed word, it all pressed into his chest. Slowly, he lifted his gaze back to Rollins, who merely nodded as though to confirm that yes, this was indeed real. "Pick up line 1, Carter," the captain added gently. With steady hands, Carter reached for the phone on the corner of the desk. The receiver crackled faintly as a voice, polished and official, greeted him on the other end. "Officer Carter, this is Elaine Prescott from the Office of Presidential Communications. On behalf of the President, we'd like to formally extend our invitation and discuss arrangements for your visit to Washington. The President has personally reviewed reports of your actions and would like to commend you in person." Carter swallowed hard. His voice, when it finally emerged, carried its usual quiet steadiness. I'd be honored, ma'am." Prescott's tone softened, warm and professional. "We'll coordinate everything. You'll be well taken care of, officer. The nation owes you a great deal." The call concluded with logistical details, which Carter jotted down instinctively. When he finally placed the receiver back on its cradle, the room settled into a profound, contemplative stillness. Captain Rollins broke it first. "Big deal, James. Bigger than you probably realize." Carter exhaled slowly, the enormity of it still sinking in. Before he could gather his thoughts fully, the rumble of growing voices drifted from outside the office. The precinct had caught wind of the news. By the time Carter stepped back into the bullpen, his fellow officers were already rising from their chairs, approaching with broad smiles and hearty claps on the back. Marquez smirked, extending a hand. "White House, huh? Not bad for a guy who still brings donuts every Thursday." Laughter broke the tension. Other officers crowded around, Diaz, Patel, even the usually reserved Lieutenant Green. Congratulations poured freely, their pride unmistakable. Carter, ever modest, dipped his head slightly and thanked them, though the flush rising along his collar betrayed his unease at the spotlight. Before long, local reporters gathered outside the station's front doors. Word had traveled faster than he'd anticipated. Microphones were hoisted, cameras angled, their eager questions spilling out as soon as Carter approached. "What does this recognition mean to you, Officer Carter? Did you ever imagine an act like this would lead to a White House visit? How does it feel knowing the President himself wants to meet you?" He fielded each inquiry with calm restraint, never straying far from the truth. "I was just doing my job," he repeated, his voice clear but unassuming. "Protecting my community. That's always been enough for me." Behind him, Captain Rollins watched with an approving nod. His officers gathered nearby, their pride evident as flashes of camera lights illuminated Carter's measured stance. By late afternoon, as the reporters dispersed and the precinct returned to its routine, Carter finally found a quiet moment by his desk. The invitation rested beside his notepad, its gold-embossed lettering reflecting the afternoon light. He ran a thumb over its edge thoughtfully. He hadn't sought this recognition, nor had he expected accolades to follow his actions. Yet, the honor was undeniable, tangible in the weight of that letter and the buzz it stirred among colleagues and townsfolk alike. Sergeant Marquez wandered by, leaning briefly against Carter's desk. "You ready for that fancy trip east, Carter?" He looked up, a flicker of dry humor finally tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Guess I better find a clean suit." Marquez chuckled, pushing off the desk with a shrug. "You'll do us proud, man." As the station settled into its evening rhythms, Carter sat quietly, hands folded, gaze steady on the distant window where the town outside continued its gentle pace. His heart, though steady, carried a quiet ripple of reflection. He hadn't chased recognition. He hadn't sought the limelight. But if standing up for what was right had brought him here, well, then he'd accept it with the same steady grace he brought to every shift. Tomorrow, the journey east would begin. Tonight, he remained where he belonged, grounded and sure. The town's protector. The officer who simply did what needed to be done. The black SUV slowed to a halt under the stately north portico of the White House. Officer James Carter stepped out, the gleam of his polished shoes catching the sunlight. His formal uniform, crisp and adorned with his service medals, fit him with understated authority. Beside him stood Captain Rollins, stoic and proud, and behind them, Carter's parents and younger sister emerged, their eyes wide with wonder and quiet awe. The sheer scale and grandeur of the White House unfolded before them, the towering columns, manicured lawns, and gleaming white facades standing as a symbol far larger than anything back home. Yet Carter's stride remained even, shoulders squared but unassuming. His hometown roots were stitched deep, grounding him even in these hallowed surroundings. A White House aide greeted the group warmly, guiding them through security checkpoints and past portraits of past presidents. They wound through gilded hallways, intricate crown molding framing each corridor. History seemed to hum beneath their feet, every step echoing decades of leadership and legacy. Yet Carter absorbed it all quietly, his expression calm, absorbing but never overwhelmed. At last, they entered the East Room. Golden drapes cascaded from high windows, crystal chandeliers cast soft light across the polished wooden floor, and rows of dignitaries, military officials, and press stood poised, their murmur of conversation hushed in anticipation. Flags flanked the grand podium at the front, the presidential seal gleaming against the rich blue backdrop. Carter's eyes swept across the crowd. Faces turned toward him, some familiar from television, others unknown yet clearly distinguished. Admirals, senators, cabinet members, and journalists had gathered in one place, and though the space brimmed with formality, a palpable current of admiration lingered in the air. Captain Rawlins patted Carter's shoulder briefly, a rare gesture of personal pride. His family settled quietly into seats reserved in the front row, their eyes shimmering with emotion. An official approached Carter, nodding with precision. "Officer Carter, please stand by the podium." He moved with measured steps, boots muted against the floorboards. His posture bore no sign of nerves, only a quiet readiness shaped from years of steady service. Behind him, camera shutters clicked, flashes of light capturing the moment as the room collectively turned toward the entrance. A staff member's voice rang out smoothly, "Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States." The double doors at the far end of the East Room opened, and President Donald Trump entered, his signature stride commanding and direct. The room rose to its feet, a standing ovation cascading into place. Carter, ever disciplined, maintained his stance as the president approached with an outstretched hand. "Officer Carter," the president greeted, his voice clear and resonant. He gripped Carter's hand firmly, locking eyes with a nod of genuine appreciation. "You showed extraordinary courage. What you did, without hesitation, without knowing the full story, epitomizes what service to our nation truly means." Carter returned the handshake with steady confidence. "Thank you, Mr. President. I was just doing what needed to be done." A faint smile tugged at the corners of Trump's mouth. He motioned toward the podium, inviting Carter to stand beside him. Facing the crowd, the president began recounting the story, his words sharp and deliberate. "Many of you know why we are gathered today. A robbery in a small town. A police officer who stepped forward, risking his life to save a woman under threat. A woman who, by chance, turned out to be the mother of one of our own congressmen. But what stands out, what matters most, is that Officer Carter did not act for recognition or reward. He acted because protecting others is who he is." The room remained still, every ear tuned sharply. Cameras flashed as the president continued. "In an era where headlines move fast and heroes are often unsung, today we take the time to recognize true valor. It's my honor to present Officer James Carter with the Presidential Medal of Valor." An aide stepped forward, presenting a polished wooden box. The president opened it carefully, revealing a deep blue ribbon and a gleaming golden medal at its center. Turning to Carter, he draped the ribbon around his neck, the medal settling against the fabric of Carter's uniform. A swell of applause filled the East Room. His family rose, their faces glowing with quiet pride. Captain Rawlins, standing off to the side, allowed himself a rare, satisfied nod. Carter remained composed, his jaw set but eyes reflective, fully aware of the significance yet never letting it swell into self-importance. As the applause tapered, President Trump leaned slightly closer, his voice lowered just for Carter. "You make this country proud, son. Don't forget that." Carter inclined his head respectfully. "Yes, sir." The ceremony concluded with photographs, handshakes, and interviews. Dignitaries approached, each offering congratulations. Reporters jotted notes furiously, camera lenses following Carter's every move. Yet, through it all, he never lost that same centered calm. His hands rested lightly at his sides, his words few but firm. Later, as he stood briefly alone by one of the tall windows overlooking the south lawn, Captain Rawlins approached quietly. "Quite a long way from our little precinct, huh, James?" Carter glanced sideways, the faintest glint of dry humor warming his steady gaze. "A little," Rollins chuckled softly. You carried it well. Proud of you. As evening approached and the guests began to filter out, Carter's family gathered around him, their pride wrapped in soft smiles and quiet tears. He squeezed his mother's hand gently, exchanged a knowing look with his sister, and let his father's hand linger firmly on his shoulder. They had traveled far that day, from a quiet patrol car under amber skies to the resplendent halls of the White House. And though the setting was grand, the man standing in the center of it all had not changed. Officer James Carter remained exactly who he had always been, steady, humble, and ready to serve. The East Room, bathed in soft golden light, fell into reverent silence as President Trump stepped behind the podium. His hands rested lightly on either side, his expression composed yet charged with purpose. The gathered officials, dignitaries, military brass, press, and Carter's family sat in poised stillness, their focus sharp and unwavering. Today, the president began, his voice resonant and deliberate. We honor a man who represents the very best of our nation's guardians. He glanced toward Carter, standing at ease beside the stage, his uniform crisp beneath the weight of steady gazes. Officer James Carter did not hesitate in the face of danger. He did not ask for recognition. He simply acted to protect, to serve, and to uphold the values that hold our communities together. The words landed with weight, measured yet stirring. The president spoke not in sweeping political rhetoric but in clean, direct reflections. He described the robbery, Carter's quick judgment under fire, his selfless defense of innocent lives. He highlighted Carter's refusal to seek the spotlight, his focus on duty rather than accolades. His tone grew solemn, edged with admiration. Courage, he said firmly, is not the absence of fear, it is action in spite of it. Officer Carter showed that courage is quiet, deliberate, and unwavering. He motioned to an aide who approached carefully, carrying a velvet-lined box. From it, the Medal of Valor gleamed under the chandelier's deep blue ribbon, brilliant gold star resting proudly at its center. With precise hands, President Trump lifted the medal and stepped toward Carter. The two men faced each other, their exchange silent but charged. Carter's posture remained steady, his gaze clear but modest. He bowed his head slightly, allowing the president to drape the ribbon around his neck. The metal settled against his uniform, its polished surface catching the light, a symbol of service etched into metal. President Trump stepped back, offering Carter a firm nod. Applause broke over the room, thunderous, genuine, sustained. It echoed across the marble and wood, rolling through the air with undeniable force. Carter's family rose to their feet, his mother's eyes misted with quiet pride, his father's jaw tight with emotion. Fellow officers standing at the back clapped with unrestrained admiration. Carter, ever composed, allowed the applause to crest before stepping forward toward the podium. He adjusted the microphone slightly, his fingers steady, his movements without flourish. The medal rested prominently on his chest, yet he wore it as he wore everything else, with humility and grace. "Thank you, Mr. President," he began, voice low and steady, carrying clearly across the room. He paused, eyes sweeping the audience briefly, not lingering but acknowledging. "I stand here because of training, teamwork, and the support of people who believe in serving something bigger than themselves. My department gave me the tools. My family gave me the foundation. And when that moment came, I did what any officer would have done." His words were plain, his delivery unadorned. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic inflections. Yet his sincerity wrapped itself around every syllable. He turned slightly toward his fellow officers. "Every man and woman who puts on this uniform knows what it means to answer the call. I was just the one on scene that night." A faint smile touched his lips, brief but warm. "This medal, this recognition, is not mine alone. It belongs to every officer who serves quietly, every day, without expecting applause. I accept it on their behalf, and I'll carry it with that in mind." He gave a small nod, signaling the end of his remarks. The room, silent and captivated, surged once again into applause, this time softer, more reflective, yet no less genuine. As Carter stepped back, the president approached once more, exchanging a few words that cameras could not catch but that left a respectful understanding between them. Photographers crowded gently forward, snapping images as Carter stood beside the president, the medal gleaming, his face composed but content. Throughout the next hour, dignitaries and officials approached to shake Carter's hand. His captain clasped him by the shoulder with unmistakable pride. Cabinet members offered congratulations. Senators leaned in with words of admiration. His family joined him, and for long moments his mother did not release his hand, her thumb tracing lightly over his knuckles as if to ground herself in the reality of the moment. In quieter corners, Carter engaged in low conversations. Some formal, others soft with personal gratitude. The grandeur of the setting, the ornate moldings and historical paintings all faded slightly against the humanity of those moments. He smiled more often now, relaxed in the embrace of peers and strangers alike, never allowing the weight of the recognition to distort his grounded nature. As the formalities wound down and guests began to drift toward exits, Carter took a final glance around the East Room. The grandeur remained, but in his eyes it held no more weight than his small precinct back home. His boots, polished to perfection, felt no different standing on marble than they had on cracked sidewalks. He touched the metal lightly, more out of acknowledgement than pride, and exchanged a glance with his captain. Rollins gave a subtle tilt of his head, the unspoken message clear: job well done, now back to it. With quiet steps, Carter rejoined his family and fellow officers, the ceremony behind him, but the meaning carried forward, etched not just in gold but in every action that would follow. The small town unfolded before him as the bus eased down Main Street. James Carter, dressed in his standard uniform, stepped off to a sight that rooted him in place. Banners stretched across storefronts: "Welcome home, Officer Carter." Hand-painted signs waved gently in the hands of schoolchildren. Shopkeepers and lifelong residents lined the sidewalks, their applause rising like a familiar chorus carried by the breeze. He hadn't expected this. The White House ceremony had been grand, yes, but this was home. Here, faces weren't blurred by cameras or microphones. These were neighbors, friends, people he'd quietly served for years without expectation. His boots met the pavement and he nodded in his understated way as folks clapped and called his name. A few veterans saluted crisply from the town square. Old Mr. Langley, who ran the hardware store, simply tipped his cap with a smile that said more than words could. Carter acknowledged them all, hands briefly raised in a modest wave, but never lingering too long in the spotlight. The mayor, a soft-spoken woman named Elaine Porter, guided Carter to a makeshift stage outside the town hall. Nothing elaborate, just a wooden platform draped in bunting, with folding chairs arranged under a wide oak. The crowd gathered closer, their expressions warm, patient. Elaine stepped forward, microphone in hand, her voice carrying with a quiet steadiness. "Today, we welcome home a man whose actions reminded the world what courage looks like. James Carter has always been a guardian of our streets, a familiar face who never sought recognition. Yet, when faced with danger, he acted not just to protect, but to preserve the very spirit of community we cherish." Carter listened, hands resting lightly on his utility belt. He shifted occasionally, eyes lowered when applause swelled, but attentive and respectful all the same. The speeches continued, short, heartfelt words from the school principal, a local pastor, even a teenage boy who shyly spoke about how Carter once fixed his bike after it was stolen. Each story wove a richer tapestry than any medal could capture. When it was his turn to speak, Carter approached the podium slowly. The crowd quieted in unison. His hand grazed the edge of the wooden stand, steadying not himself, but the gravity of the moment. "I'm grateful," he began simply, his voice carrying clear and even. "Not just for today. For every day I've been trusted to serve here. You all make this town what it is. I just wear the uniform." He scanned the crowd, his eyes settling on familiar landmarks. The diner where officers grabbed coffee at dawn, the park bench where old-timers swapped stories, the schoolyard fence where kids gathered after class. "This," he continued, gesturing faintly to the town around them, "is why we do the work. Not for medals, not for headlines. For community. For knowing each other's names. For looking out for each other without having to be asked." He kept it brief. When he stepped down, handshakes and embraces greeted him. There was no need for more. In the months that followed, life returned to its quiet rhythm. Carter resumed his patrols. His cruiser rolled along the familiar streets, past the bakery that opened before dawn, the gas station where teens lingered on Friday nights, the rows of houses with their well-tended porches. His presence brought an added layer of comfort now. His eyes, always observant, carried something deeper, an unspoken promise forged not in ceremony but in consistency. Then, on a cool autumn morning, the town gathered once again, this time at a freshly painted brick building near the old railway line. A banner hung proudly, the Officer James Carter Community Center. Elaine Porter stood once more before the crowd, her words deliberate and clear. This center stands as a reminder that service isn't just about grand gestures. It's about daily acts of care, of protection, of showing up when it matters most. Officer Carter embodies that spirit. A plaque beside the entrance bore an inscription: "To those who serve quietly, protect faithfully, and act with courage when no one is watching." This space is dedicated in honor of Officer James Carter. Carter, standing near the back, shook his head slightly with a modest smile. Children tugged at their parents' sleeves, eager to explore the new gym, classrooms, and library inside. Volunteers busied themselves organizing programs and outreach events. It wasn't a monument of stone. It was a living place, bustling with energy, designed to nurture the next generation. Weeks later, Carter's patrol car eased past the alley where, long ago, a robbery had shattered a quiet night. The glass had long been cleared. Fresh murals adorned nearby walls, painted by local teens under the guidance of community artists. The dark corners were replaced by soft lamplight and trimmed hedges. He paused at the curb, engine idling. His gaze lingered, thoughtful but peaceful. His hand rested lightly on the steering wheel, the familiar weight of duty settling comfortably on his shoulders once more. Without fanfare, he shifted into drive and moved on. Another block, another turn, another check-in on familiar streets. His story had circled outward from alley to White House to hometown, and now it returned to where it always belonged. Not with speeches or medals, but with quiet watchfulness. Because true heroism, Carter knew, didn't require an audience. It simply required showing up. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you are watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to mention Officer James Carter, President Trump, and Captain Reynolds. What part of Carter's journey inspired you the most? Was it his courage during the robbery, his humility at the White House, or his return to his hometown as a symbol of service? Your feedback means a lot, and we'd love to hear how stories like Carter's resonate with you. Stay tuned for more from Mr. Fab Tales.